The wind moves low across the birchwood, dragging winter with it like a morning veil. Snowflakes drift like ashes from some distant funeral pyre, and the branches above creak and moan, heavy with frost. In the dim pre-dawn light, the forest stands still as if listening, silent, expectant, burdened by memory. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls, low, dull, mournful. Not a summons, but a warning. A barefoot monk kneels at the edge of the tree-lean. His cloak is threadbare, his hands mottled blue with cold. Before him, half sunk in the frozen mud, lies an icon, its face worn by rain, cracked by time. The Virgin's eyes are all but gone, but the hands remain, lifted in blessing or surrender. He does not touch it. He only bows, lips moving in silent prayer. He is not praying to be heard. He is praying to remember. This is the edge of Novgorod, once proud and ancient, now dimmed beneath centuries of fog and ash. The monasteries rise like teeth from the white earth, stone on stone, carved by faith and famine alike. Their walls are thick not just with mortar, but with silence, silence kept through Mongol raids, through princes' murders, through the turning of tsars like pages in a cursed book. In one wooden hut not far from the sacred walls, a boy sits beside his father. The fire between them is weak, just enough to ward off death, not enough to warm the soul. The father works with slow, deliberate strokes, carving the face of St. George into a block of pine. The scent of resin fills the room, and the sharp whisper of the blade is the only sound. The boy watches. His hands twitch with the instinct to create, to touch. But he does not reach. He only watches, studying the way his father's knuckles flex, the way the saint's gaze slowly emerges from raw wood. Outside, the wind sings across the frozen Volkhov, and somewhere a dog howls, a long, hollow sound, neither near nor far. In this house, there is hunger. Not just for food, though the mother's stew has long since thinned to water and bone. There is a deeper hunger, one for safety, for meaning, for something beyond these cruel, endless snows. His name is Mikhail. He will one day be forgotten. But for now, he is the only son of a dying craftsman, born into a world with no promise but toil. His fingers are raw from cold, his eyes ringed with the gray of malnourishment. Yet in his chest, the ember of something flickers. Not ambition, no, not yet. Something older. Something more dangerous. He dreams of fire. Not the warmth of hearths, but of cities alight beneath foreign banners. He has heard the old men speak, when they think the children sleep. They whisper of Bata Khan, of the fire that swept from the east, of how Kiev was reduced to ash and screams. They speak of the tribute, the kneeling, the fear. And always, always they speak of when it will happen again. Mikhail does not fear it. He wonders what it might feel like. To see the heavens open in flame. To stand amid the end of all things. His mother sings softly at the window as she mends what's left of his cloak. The song is older than memory, words in a language half forgotten, something Slavic but darker, full of vowels and sorrow. Her hands are deft, but her eyes do not lift. She has lost 2 children already. She does not ask the Lord for protection anymore. Only for time. At Vespers, the monks file through the cloisters like shadows. Their breath fogs in the icy air, and candle smoke coils in the rafters like incense spirits. The choir is small tonight. Voices crack with illness, with exhaustion. But still they sing. Even as their stomachs groan and their joints swell. Even as rumors churn like vultures over carcasses. There is talk of the Lithuanian border. Of Christian converts with pagan knives. Of traders who vanished on the old forest roads, their carts found gutted and bloodied. Of wolves grown bold. Of famine walking in the skin of winter. Yet Mikhail walks among them now, holding the censer. He swings it in slow, perfect rhythm, smoke trailing behind like a soul leaving flesh. He breathes deeply, not because he is faithful, but because it smells of something that does not rot. In the dim candlelight, his face looks older. The shadows sculpt him into something timeless. He watches the abbot with sharp eyes. Not with reverence, but curiosity. What power lets this man command silence? What secrets sit behind those closed lips and pale icons? The old monk meets his gaze once, just once, and in that moment, Mikhail feels something cold ripple through his spine. Not fear. Something worse. Recognition. He returns home late, walking across the frozen ground with bare hands tucked into his sleeves. He does not cry, though the wind stings like lashes. At the edge of the settlement, he stops. Looks back at the city. At the walls, the towers, the domes. They seem fragile. Beautiful, but breakable. A torch burns weakly atop the monastery gate, sputtering in the wind. For a moment, it flares brighter, then dies. Darkness swallows the road behind him. He does not move. He stands there for a long time, listening. Somewhere in the woods, a crow calls. Not once. 3 times. In old stories, that means death. In some, it means fate. In the stories no one tells anymore, it means a king is being born. But Mikhail does not know these stories. Not yet. He only knows the cold, and the hunger, and the silence. But within him, deep, buried, silent, there is something forming. Like a spark beneath snow. A flame waiting for breath. The land itself seems to hold its breath. The stars above blink slowly behind gauze clouds of winter mist. Somewhere, far beyond the woods, beyond the rivers, beyond the steppes, a new prince is born beneath gilded ceilings. One day he will ride with banners, crowned and kissed by priests and poets alike. But for now, he is only a name being whispered in a palace too far to touch. And Mikhail, boy of birchwood and snow, will never see him. But the choices he makes, the silence he keeps, the prayers he never says, they will shape that prince's fate. Because empires are not only built by kings. They are built by the hands of those who carve saints from splinters, who carry fire in darkness, who listen when no one else dares speak. The sky begins to pale. Dawn comes slow in these northern lands. But it comes. And with it, the long breath of history begins again, quiet, cold, and waiting to be born. That a falcon cuts through the morning mist above the Volga, its wings wide as blades, silent but for the rush of air. Below it, the river breathes, a long, sullen exhale through reeds heavy with ice. The barge groans against the current, its hull crusted with salt and frozen mud. On its deck, men move with the weariness of beasts. Their hands are red with rope burns, their breath rising in clouds, their voices rough with too many tongues. The helmsman mutters a prayer to the east. His cloak, stiff with frost, cracks as he moves. In one hand he holds a talisman carved from whale bone, a fragment of something older than even the church. He sings a song as he works. Not for joy. But for rhythm. For memory. For something to fill the space where warmth once lived. The scent on the wind is bitter, hemp, wet wool, fish oil, and the distant smoke of peat fires. A cargo of furs, beeswax, and salted meat sways with each turn of the river. And on every crate, scratched deep into wood, the double-headed eagle, watching. Always watching. This is not yet the empire. Not yet the grandeur of the Tsars. This is the fractured skin beneath the robe, Rus, still raw, still bleeding from centuries of raids and fires. Cities like Ryazan, Pskov, and Tver flicker along the horizon, each a fragile tooth in a mouth too often punched bloody. The men aboard the barge do not speak of politics. They speak of wolves. Of bandits hiding in the woods where snow drinks sound. Of taxes too steep for men with no roofs. Of their sons being conscripted by lords who never kneel. Of rumors, Lithuanians gathering steel, the Mongol yoke tightening again like a curse made flesh. At a bend in the river, a Tatar scout crouches low in the reeds. He does not blink. His breath is shallow. He watches the barge drift by, fingers resting on a curved blade. He is one of many. They are the watchers, the unseen judges. And from the steppe, tribute will be demanded again. Far behind the mist and trees, the bells of Novgorod ring. Low and uneven. Not for mass. But for something else. Perhaps a death. Perhaps a warning. In this land, the difference is thin as smoke. And beyond Novgorod, buried in the monastery walls like a secret seed, a child is being raised beneath shadows. His name will be Ivan. Not yet the terrible. Not yet crowned in blood and gold. For now, he is a silent boy in a stone room, kneeling before a wall of icons. He mimics the old nuns' prayers, though he does not yet know their meaning. He watches the candles burn low, their wax melting like time. The child is often alone. The nuns speak in hushed tones. His mother is gone. Poisoned, they say. Others whisper darker things. His father, the grand prince, long dead. He remembers his voice only as an echo, a sound that once meant safety. Now he listens for nothing. He trusts no one. Not the monks. Not the servants. Not the thin-faced tutor with the scrolls in Greek and Latin. He learns to read their silences instead. That is where the truth hides. At night, he walks the cold corridors barefoot, trailing his fingers along the stone, listening to his heartbeat echo between pillars. The palace is not warm. It is not a home. It is a cage with gold hinges. And yet, the boy dreams. He dreams not of love, or family, or peace. He dreams of domes. Of towers so high they pierce the sky. Of horses galloping across frozen lakes, banners unfurling like wings. He dreams of armies in silence, of thrones that crack beneath his weight, of cities bowing, not in fear, but in awe. He does not yet know what he is dreaming. But something ancient stirs behind his eyes. Something that smells of smoke and steel. In the market square below, a blind gusly player sings. His voice breaks with age and cold. The song is older than Ivan, older than the boyars who pass him without coin, older than the city itself. It speaks of saints and serpents, of kings turned to ash, of fire falling from heaven. No one listens closely. No one wants to remember. But the boy hears the song from his window. He presses his hand to the frost-covered glass. "Will I burn?" he whispers to no one. The candles in the chapel gutter. Outside, snow begins to fall again. Slow and soundless. Covering the city in a soft white forgetting. Down by the riverside, traders light lanterns to scare off thieves. A man slices bread with a blade that once killed a prince. A woman washes blood from her husband's coat. No one asks why it was stained. No one dares. And still, the falcon flies, circling above the frozen world, above the broken roads, above the memories buried beneath snow and silence. In a distant tower, a priest sharpens his quill with a dagger. He prepares the scrolls. Decrees must be written. Laws must be declared. The boy must be made into more than memory. He must be shaped, forged, declared divine. And if he cannot be raised in love, he will be raised in awe. In fear. The falcon lands on the spire of a forgotten church, its claws scraping stone worn by centuries. It does not move. It only watches. The monastery bell rings again, this time clearer. Louder. The note carries across the river, across the city, across the bones of Rus. It rings for a prince. A future. A reckoning. And below, in a cell no larger than a cupboard, a boy lights a candle. His hands shake. Not with cold. With something else. Something that feels like the weight of a crown before it touches his head. Outside, the snow covers everything. But not forever. Beneath it, things stir. Names. Vows. Vengeance. The river does not stop. It carries the barge eastward, toward cities not yet built, toward stories not yet born. And in the stillness of that cold and rising empire, something begins. A voice, perhaps. Or a scream. Or maybe just a whisper, soon. Snow presses hard against the Kremlin walls, thick and impenetrable, muffling the world like wool wrapped around a screaming mouth. The towers loom above the city like frozen watchmen, blind and cold. At their feet, the streets are hollow with silence. Only the wind moves, dragging curls of smoke from dying hearths, tugging at loose shutters like a ghost trying to enter. Beneath these stones, in a chamber where the walls weep with moisture and iron chains clink in their sleep, a man scratches a name into birch bark. His fingers tremble. Not from cold, though the cold is cruel, but from fear, from the knowledge that no ink will ever carry the truth like blood can. His makeshift quill is a splinter of bone, broken from the rib of a friend who begged for mercy and found none. The script is uneven. The bark tears. It does not matter. It will never leave this place. Above, the Tsar walks barefoot across the chapel floor. His robe of lynx fur trails behind him, collecting wax from broken candles and dust from a floor swept by the desperate. His breath rises in short clouds, fogging the golden icons, as if even the saints cannot bear to look at him clearly. He does not blink. He does not kneel. He stares into the face of Christ and sees only himself reflected. Ivan. Grozny. The terrible. But to him, he is not terrible. He is chosen. Consecrated by flame and silence. The whispers that echo through the corridors are more sermon than gossip now. They speak not of policy or diplomacy, but of executions. Of black-robed riders on black horses, oprychniki, with dogs' heads strapped to their saddles, and brooms to sweep away the enemies of the crown. Symbols of obedience, of terror, of cleansing fire. A boyar who once laughed too loudly at a feast is dragged through the snow, his teeth still stained with wine. A widow who kissed a Lithuanian trader is made to walk naked through the square, her skin burning beneath the gaze of 100 watchers who say nothing. Silence has become a virtue. Words now weigh more than silver, and spill more blood. The scent of Moscow is changing. Gone are the warm notes of honey cakes, of sweet kvass, of spring smoke. Now it reeks of old leather, dried blood, of horses kept ready for flight and bells that toll not for joy, but judgment. And still, in the heart of it all, Ivan prays. He kneels now, suddenly. The icons look down with eyes that seem to shift when unobserved. He mutters not in Russian, but in Church Slavonic, dragging syllables like chains. Behind his closed lids, he sees cities aflame. Kazan, his triumph, his agony. He remembers the screams of Muslim children as cathedrals rose on the bones of mosques. He remembers riding through streets ankle-deep in ash. He remembers feeling holy. It was there he first believed he could become not just a ruler, but something more. A prophet. A wrath. A living gospel written in steel. The Kremlin echoes with footsteps now, fast, clipped, uncertain. A servant bringing news. Another revolt in the west. A noble's betrayal. A famine creeping from the fields like a sickness with no cure. Ivan does not rise. He only opens his eyes. The fire in them flickers. It has not dimmed. It has not gone out. In the marketplace, a gusly player plucks a broken tune with fingers missing 2 nails. He sings of a czar who speaks with angels and cuts with knives. No one corrects him. No one dares. Around him, peasants trade roots for salt, fabric for bread. A child with a frostbitten ear sells tears as miracles, holy water, he calls them. Every man here carries a secret. Every woman has buried someone she loved. And yet they move forward. Survival in Moscow is a kind of liturgy, repeated endlessly, hollowed of meaning, but still performed. In a dark corridor, Ivan reads a letter. It is unsigned, but the hand is familiar. A former friend. A cousin. Someone who once shared his table, who once held his infant son in his arms. The words accuse him of madness. Of blasphemy. Of building a kingdom on corpses. Ivan does not tear the letter. He does not burn it. He folds it once, precisely, and places it beneath the icon of Saint Michael. Then he turns and whispers to the guard, "Summon the wolves." And the black-robed men ride again. Outside, the river freezes thick. Bodies float just below the surface, caught in the ice like flies in amber. Their faces are pale, lips parted. Some still seem to cry out. But no one listens. The city steps over them, day after day, until the thaw comes and the river drinks them whole. In the palace, Ivan speaks to his dead wife. Anastasia. The only one he ever loved. Her portrait stares from the wall, faded, cracked, but still smiling. He speaks not aloud, but in the silence between heartbeats. He blames her death for everything. For his rage. For his cruelty. For the throne that now feels more like a tomb. He sees her in dreams. Sometimes, she wears a crown of birch branches. Sometimes, a veil of bees. Sometimes, nothing at all, just light. But always, she turns away before he can speak. He clutches his scepter tighter. Gold, studded with garnets. It was forged for authority, but it feels like a weapon now. Or a crutch. The city dreams of escape, but the gates are watched. Spies move like rats beneath the floorboards. Letters vanish. Voices disappear. And yet, amid it all, life persists. A child is born in a peasant hut at the edge of the city, swaddled in wool and warmed by coals in a clay bowl. The mother hums a lullaby from the old times, her voice thin but steady. She names him Vasily. She will never tell him of the day he was born, not the screams, not the wolves that passed near the door, not the neighbors who refused to help. She will only tell him that the snow fell soft, and that the stars were clear. Because sometimes, a lie is the only gift a mother can give. The Tsar watches the snow fall from his window. The flakes land on the sill like tiny bones. He wonders if God still watches him. If God ever did. A monk arrives with a relic, said to be the finger of a saint lost during the sacking of Constantinople. Ivan holds it with reverence, then laughter. He throws it into the fire and watches it blacken. Even saints burn, he mutters. Night comes heavy. The domes of Moscow glisten with frost, their gilded surfaces pale beneath a moon wrapped in smoke. Somewhere, a woman gives birth. Somewhere, a man is buried without a name. Somewhere, a scribe crosses out a sentence in a chronicle that once told the truth. And beneath it all, Russia grows, not upward like a tree, but outward, like a plague, like roots seeking something to strangle. Ivan lays in his chamber, eyes open. He cannot sleep. The bed is too soft. The silence, too loud. He thinks of the boy he once was, walking barefoot through the palace halls, listening to the world breathe behind stone. That boy is dead. But his ghost lingers. In every order given. In every name scratched into birch bark. Outside, the blind gusly player sings again. A new song. Or perhaps the same one, just broken differently. It speaks of kings who forget their names. And of fires that remember. A scream cuts through the palace at dusk. Not loud. Not wild. Just sharp enough to stop the wind. For a moment, all of Moscow seems to lean in and listen. The bells hesitate. The dogs quiet. And somewhere behind the thick stone walls, something fragile breaks, not a bone, not a window, something older. The boy is crumpled on the floor. His eyes wide, unfocused. Blood gathers at his temple like a slow red blossom in snow. Beside him, the Tsar's hand still trembles. Not from regret. but from something worse, recognition. Ivan does not cry. He does not fall to his knees. He stands, as if still within some vision, some punishment, some holy trance. The silence stretches, becomes unbearable. Then, finally, he speaks, "I did not mean to strike so hard." But the walls do not forgive. The boy does not rise. The air is dead. And with him, the future cracks. The candlelight flickers against the stone as the servants rush in. None dare touch the body. None dare meet the Tsar's eyes. They whisper prayers beneath their breath, prayers not for the soul of the slain prince, but for themselves. For their necks. For their children. The dead boy's name was also Ivan. The second. Crowned in youth. Promised the world. Raised in the shadow of Kazan, amid stories of fire and faith and conquest. He had dreamed of being different. Softer. Wiser. Now he dreams no more. His blood stains the same palace that once baptized Russia's greatness. And yet outside, the city breathes. Wooden houses lean under snowdrifts. Chimneys cough with smoke. Men carry logs, women knead dough, children play with rag dolls made from torn robes and chicken bones. But something in the rhythm has changed. A tension in the air, like before a storm or after a murder. They say the Tsar walks the halls now with no crown. They say he talks to shadows, prays to icons that have turned their eyes away. That he cannot sleep. That he hears his son's voice in the silence between bells. Some say he has gone mad. Others say he has finally seen what he truly is. The bells of Moscow do not toll for the air. There is no funeral for a future killed by its own father. The court wears black, but their mourning is silent, clenched. The boyars grieve behind closed doors, some for the prince, some for the balance that has now tipped too far. The people whisper in market stalls, in stables, in bathhouses. They speak in riddles, in parables. The oak that broke its own limb cannot grow straight. A river that drinks its source will run dry. But in the Kremlin, Ivan still rules. With shaking hands and eyes like cold iron. He holds court in a chamber lit by blue glass. The light casts him in shadows, as if the saints have forsaken color itself. He does not speak much now. When he does, his voice is low, steady. Terrible in its restraint. Like a knife laid gently across the throat. He signs decrees that tighten his grip. Confiscates land. Demands oaths from men who once dined beside him. The Oprichnina returns, not with dogs this time, but with ink and silence and disappearances. Whole families vanish. Their homes boarded shut. Their names struck from records. The Tsar rides through the city once more, alone. No banners. No procession. The hooves echo like drums over frozen cobblestone. The people bow, but do not look up. They fear that to meet his gaze is to see the end. In a convent beyond the river, his wife, his new wife, waits. Cast aside after displeasing him. Her face once cherished, now hidden beneath layers of ash-colored wool. She does not speak his name. She chants psalms, her voice thin but steady. But each syllable carries the weight of a curse. And yet, Ivan lives. In a world thick with omens and betrayal, he survives not through kindness or clarity, but through sheer will. His body weakens, his spine hunched, his hands riddled with pain, but his mind sharpens like a whetstone on bone. He writes letters now. Dozens. Hundreds. To kings. To monks. To ghosts. Letters that mix scripture with prophecy, logic with madness. He declares himself both scourge and savior, both Job and Judas. In one letter to the English Queen, he begs for asylum. In another, he threatens war. In yet another, he claims visions, flaming swords, weeping icons, a voice in the wind that called him Tsar of the last days. No one knows which to believe. Perhaps they are all true. The empire stirs beneath his hand. New cities rise. Old borders swell. But the soul of the nation seems caught in a snare, bleeding, haunted, waiting for a new face to lead it from this long, cruel dream. And yet none come. The church grows quieter. The bells toll less often. The icons seem to fade. Even the wolves outside the city howl less. One winter night, a fire breaks out near the Kremlin stables. Flames roar into the sky, red and wild, devouring wood and hay and straw men stuffed for pagan festivals. Some say it was sabotage. Others say it was a sign. Ivan stands at his window, watching the blaze. He says nothing. But in the flickering light, his face looks younger. Or perhaps only emptier. He remembers his son's last breath. The way the blood pooled. The way the silence afterward felt like snow falling inside a church. He wonders if God turned his face away in that moment. Or if he had never been watching to begin with. In the ashes of the stables, a half-burnt toy is found, a wooden horse, one ear missing, the saddle scorched. It is taken to the chapel. Placed beside a candle. No one speaks of it. But that night, Ivan dreams. He dreams of a field filled with crows. Of a young boy walking barefoot, carrying a flame in cupped hands. Of a kingdom made of mirrors, all cracked. Of his father's voice calling him from beneath the ice. When he wakes, he cannot breathe. The candle at his bedside has gone out. And in that moment, as the frost creeps across the window and the walls tighten with silence, something shifts. The Tsar rises. He dresses slowly. The robe fits poorly now, his body shrunken, bent. He walks not to the throne, but to the chamber where his son once slept. It is empty. Dust coats the floor. The toys have been removed. The blankets gone. Only a single hairpin remains, dropped, perhaps, by the nursemaid. It glints in the pale light. He kneels. And for the first time in years, he weeps. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just tears, sliding down a face that has forgotten how to be human. A father, kneeling at the edge of a bed that will never again be slept in. And outside, in the cold streets of Moscow, a child hums a lullaby his mother never taught him. He does not know why. But the tune stays with him. A dead bell rings over Moscow. Low and colorless. Not the sharp clang of warning, not the joyous peal of Easter, just a single note, stretched across the frostbitten morning like a black ribbon across a corpse. Ivan is gone. They find him slumped beside his icon stand, a book still open in his lap. The words unfinished. The candle long since choked in its own wax. His mouth frozen half open, as if he died in the middle of a thought he could never speak aloud. His servants weep behind walls. But it is not grief alone they carry. It is fear. For no man knows what walks in the shadow of a dead Tsar. There is no roar from the city. No rebellion. No cheers. Just the brittle hush of disbelief. For decades, Ivan's breath had hung over Russia like a storm. Now, the air is too still. Too quiet. And in the silence, something breaks. His surviving son, Fefer, is crowned with a hand that trembles. A gentle boy. Timid. Holy. Married, but childless. More monk than monarch. He speaks softly, rules less. His robes hang heavy on shoulders made for prayer, not for war. The boyars circle like wolves. Old names return to the court. Godunov. Shuaysky. Belsky. Faces that once cowered, now calculating. Behind smiles, daggers are sharpened. In the streets, famine grows like rot beneath the floorboards. Crops fail. Trade slows. The Volga dries, then floods. Each season worse than the last, as if the land itself resents being ruled by ghosts. In the wooden churches, priests lift up their hands but find no answers. The icons grow darker. Mold creeps into sacred corners. Candles flicker out without wind. And the people? They wait. They wait with mud on their boots and ashes in their teeth. Wait through winters that kill their infants. Wait through springs that yield no wheat. Wait through rumors of salvation, Polish envoys, Lithuanian knights, whispers from Novgorod and Smolensk. But salvation does not come. Only shadows. And then, in 1598, Pfeiffer dies. Childless. Silent. Like a breath extinguished. There is no air. No voice from heaven. No vision from the Trinity. Only the heavy rustle of boyars arguing behind gilded doors, voices rising like crows around a carcass. They crown Boris Godunov. A man from outside the sacred bloodline. Clever. Ruthless. Born of lower nobility, now seated upon a throne too ancient to forgive. He rules with cold hands. Builds churches. Reforms currency. Tries to feed the people with grain pulled from state reserves. But the people remember. They remember his face beside Ivan's. They remember his silence when Pfeiffer withered. They whisper that he poisoned the Tsar's heir. That he bribed the church. That he crowned himself with Judas silver. The famine deepens. Starving families boil leather boots. Mothers abandon swaddled corpses in churchyards. Wolves are seen in the streets. And into this darkness, a voice. A monk in the south claims he is Dmitri. Ivan's long-lost son. The boy who supposedly died with a slit throat in Uglitch. Back from exile. Back from the grave. The people believe. Or rather, they need to believe. For years, they have eaten sorrow. Now, they devour prophecy. They call him the true Tsar. The miracle heir. He rides with Cossacks at his back and Polish sabers at his side. Boris calls him a fraud. A heretic. A puppet of the Jesuits. He orders arrests. Tortures messengers. But it is too late. The winds shift. Dmitri marches on Moscow. And then Boris dies. Not by sword. Not by poison. By sudden fever. Or fear. Or God's hand, depending who you ask. And so the gates open. Dmitri enters the capital to the sound of cheers, bells that had fallen silent now erupt with holy fire. He enters like a prince from a dream. Pale, eloquent, foreign-educated. Dresses in Polish silks. Speaks of justice. Promises mercy. Marries a Polish Catholic bride in the Kremlin Cathedral. But Moscow does not dream long. The nobles grow restless. The people notice the foreign guard, the Latin prayers, the golden slippers. They begin to whisper again. Whispers become chants. In 1606, the bells toll once more. This time, they ring for blood. A mob storms the Kremlin. Dmitri is dragged through the square. Shot. Stabbed. Beaten. His body is burned. His ashes fired from a cannon toward Poland, let him fly home. The dream ends in fire. But the nightmare is only beginning. For now, all of Russia unravels. One after another, new Dmitris rise. False Dmitris. Each claiming the crown. Each drawing armies. Each backed by nobles, or foreigners, or desperate men who only want bread and purpose. The time of troubles has begun. It is not a war. Not a rebellion. It is a slow drowning. Nobles shift allegiance like cloaks in the wind. Whole cities are sacked, their churches defiled, their women taken. Famine walks hand in hand with plague. Villages vanish. Sons vanish. Hope vanishes. And then the foreign boots arrive. Swedish banners. Polish horses. Mercenaries with gold in their eyes and no cross on their chest. They march on Moscow. They enter. They crown a Polish prince. The Tsar's throne, for the first time in history, seats a foreign king. And for the first time, Russia seems to bleed from within. The Kremlin bells are silent again. The people do not rise. They are too weak. Until a peasant bell rings in Nizhny Novgorod. Just one. Then another. Then a call spreads, north to east, village to forest to burned-out town. A call not from nobles, nor priests, but from the people. A butcher's son named Kuzma Minin rises. He calls for arms. Not for power. For Russia. A prince, Dmitry Pozharsky, joins him. And together, in rags and hunger, with spears made from plowshares, with icons strapped to wagons, they march. They march to Moscow. They march not for gold. Not for thrones. But for soil. For memory. For something that cannot be named but cannot be allowed to die. The fires burn again, but this time, they cleanse. In 1612, they take back the city. The foreigners flee. The throne is empty again. But the soul of Russia still breathes. And in the wake of that breath, after so many years of silence, the people do something astonishing. They choose. In 1613, they crown a boy. 16 years old. Mikhail Romanov. From an old name. A quiet name. But one untouched by blood. A boy whose father is in exile, whose face is barely known. But the people kneel. Not out of joy. Not out of trust. But because they are tired of bleeding. Because sometimes, a quiet name is safer than a loud one. Because Russia needs to sleep. Needs to rest beneath snow. And so the Romanovs begin. And the boy watches the land, not with ambition, not yet, but with fear. He knows the stories. He knows the ghosts that walk these halls. And far below, in the soil, beneath the frost, beneath the ashes, those ghosts wait. The throne room is quiet. Too quiet. No courtiers whisper. No bells toll. Only the rustle of robes, the distant crackle of frost on the windowpanes, the sound of breath, measured, held, almost holy. And there, in the center, sits a boy. Mikhail Fyodorovich Romanov. 16 years old. His face still soft with youth, his hands still unsure upon the armrest carved for emperors. The crown weighs heavy, not only on his head, but on the silence of the hall, as though the dead themselves lean forward to watch. Outside, the snow melts into mud. The streets of Moscow stink of fire, rot, and lingering war. Chickens scratch at the ash heaps. The poor eat tree bark boiled in brine. The soil is tired. The people more so. And yet, the Tsar has been chosen. Not seized, not inherited. Chosen. By sabor, by consensus, by prayer and exhaustion and desperation. Not because he is strong. But because he is quiet. Because he is untouched. Because in a world drenched in betrayal, he seems almost blank. A slate. A second chance. His mother weeps when the crown is placed. Not from joy, but from fear. She remembers how kings die. How boys are swallowed by palaces. How Rome fell not from flame but from forgetting. Mikhail does not speak much. But he listens. To the monks. To the boyars. To the wind that slips through the broken teeth of towers still scorched by Polish boots. His reign begins not with a feast, but with silence. And rebuilding. The first Romanov Tsar wears wool, not ermine. Eats barley. Prays 3 times a day. Orders churches repaired, not palaces. Sends for his father, still hiding in a northern monastery, reluctant to return to a world of chains and crowns. But the wounds of Russia do not heal quickly. The steppe is restless. The borders blur. Peasants flee from taxmen and famine alike. To the south, the Cossacks grow bold. Wild riders, half-brothers to wolves, dressed in tattered leathers and carrying old grudges. They speak of freedom, of vengeance, of gold. To the north, Sweden watches. To the west, Poland still smolders. And in the heart of Russia, something deeper trembles, a hunger not for food, but for meaning. After so many false tsars, so many betrayals, what does it mean to be ruled again? The churches say Mikhail is God's anointed. But God has been silent for years. His house is burned. His icons blackened with soot and sorrow. So Mikhail governs through stillness. Through steadiness. He rebuilds what was lost, bridges, roads, granaries. Sends emissaries to Siberia, to distant outposts, to lands where the Orthodox cross had not yet cast its long shadow. And slowly, slowly, Russia exhales. It is not peace, not yet. But it is less war. The new Tsar listens to whispers in the palace. Whispers of conspiracies, of old blood feuds, of boyars still dreaming of their own crowns. But he does not strike. He waits. Because he has seen what haste becomes. He was born into fire. And he remembers its taste. But in this stillness, something new grows. A sense of structure. Of dynasty. He marries. A quiet girl. No foreign queen, no grand duchess. A Russian name. A Russian heart. They have children. One by one. And with each child, the throne roots itself deeper. In the countryside, the serfs are bound tighter to the land. Laws are passed. Edicts whispered. Mobility dies. The noble landowners grow fat again. But the state, for the first time in decades, holds shape. Mikhail does not conquer. But he does endure. And endurance, in this age, is its own kind of miracle. He rules for over 30 years. Without spectacle. Without slaughter. And when he dies, it is not from blade or poison or exile. It is in his bed. Surrounded by prayers. His son, Alexei, inherits not just a throne, but a rhythm. And so, a pattern begins. The Romanovs grow. Like a tree too cautious to bloom in spring, but steady enough to survive every storm. Their palaces expand. Their robes lengthen. Their alliances deepen. But beneath this calm, beneath the rituals and the festivals and the clean-cut sons, a question remains. What was lost in the time of troubles? And what darkness still sleeps beneath the soil? In the archives, an old monk writes by candlelight. He records the years in thick ink, each sentence wrapped in prayer. But he pauses at Ivan's death. He writes slowly. Carefully. As though afraid the parchment might scream. He ends the entry with a simple phrase, "Let God remember, if men forget." In the forests beyond the city, an abandoned chapel still leans against the wind. Its bells are cracked. Its altar scorched. But each spring, violets grow through the floor. No one tends them. No one dares tear them up. And in Moscow, a painter begins a new icon. He paints Mikhail in gold, but his eyes are unsure. He paints his sons, crowned and solemn. He paints the dome of heaven above them, stars etched in blue. But in the corner, behind a curtain, he hides a shadow. Just a trace of flame. A reminder. Because the Romanovs are not just a dynasty. They are the memory of chaos, tamed into ritual. They are a wound, scabbed over with silver. And in their quiet, the soul of Russia begins again, haunted, yes, but whole. For now that a hammer strikes wood. Then again. Then again. The rhythm is unnatural. Fast. Foreign. Not the gentle knock of a peasant mending his door, not the toll of a monastery bell, but something harsher. Urgent. On the banks of the Neva River, the trees fall. One by one. Roots exposed like veins torn from the flesh of the land. Swamps are drained. Foundations laid with frostbitten hands. Men work until their fingers bleed, then freeze. And in their silence, a city begins to rise. Peter is building his window to the west. And the wind that rushes through it will strip Russia to the bone. He is not like his father. Not like the soft-spoken Mikhail. Not like the careful, prayer-wrapped tsars of old. Peter does not kneel. He does not wait. He rips history from the soil with both hands. He is tall. Impossibly tall. His voice loud, cracking like firewood. He drinks, he swears, he laughs too hard at things that should not be laughed at. He learns shipbuilding from Dutch carpenters. Stuffs himself into sailors' clothes. Forges cannons with his own soot-covered hands. He speaks of Europe with fever in his eyes, of oceans, navies, universities. He returns from the West not with gifts, but with commands. Beards are to be shaved. Robes shortened. The boyars, who once lounged in velvet, now tremble in stiff collars. A tax on beards is imposed. Holy icons are pushed aside to make room for foreign clocks. Change does not creep in. It storms the gates. Church bells are melted down for war. Monasteries stripped of lands. The patriarch is silenced, replaced by a holy synod, chained to the state like a servant in livery. Russia, once wrapped in incense and silence, now clangs with muskets and marching boots. And still, Peter builds. He builds a navy from nothing, ships summoned from snow and sweat and pine. He builds schools where Latin replaces Church Slavonic, where sons of nobles are taught mathematics, not miracles. He builds factories, canals, bureaucracies. A machine that eats land and time and memory. He builds St. Petersburg, on bones. Tens of thousands die in the mud. Their names lost to the fog. Their breath vanishing into the swamp air. But the city rises. Stone by stone. Church by church. Fortress by fortress. He calls it his capital. Names it for a saint. But all who see it know whose soul it bears. Peter is the saint of the storm. And the storm does not pause. The great northern war rages, year after year, battle after battle. The frost of Narva. The blood at Poltava. Sweden broken. Russia risen. The Tsar is now an emperor. Not just of Rus, but of empire. He wears a crown reforged in Roman steel. Uses the Latin alphabet to sign his decrees. The old Russia, the candlelit Russia of saints and soil, fades into shadow. But shadows have long memories. In the forests, old men still whisper the names of saints whose relics were moved. Old women still bury crosses under hearthstones. Children still learn stories of Ivan, of Dmitri, of the silent years. They wear the new coats. Speak the new words. But their dreams are still laced with bells and blood and bread. Peter does not dream. He builds. He reforms. He demands. And behind him, the court follows, or is dragged. His son, Alexei, rebels. Quietly, carefully, with letters and priests and plans. He speaks of returning to the old ways. Of faith. Of stillness. Peter finds out. There is no forgiveness. The Tsar, the emperor, tries his own son. Condemns him. The boy dies in prison. Some say from torture. Some say from shame. Peter buries him without ceremony. There is no icon, no candle. Only a father who has chosen empire over blood. And in that moment, the Romanov line becomes more than dynasty, it becomes machinery. The soul of Russia, once soft and mystical, is welded to a vision of steel. No longer a kingdom of pilgrims and monks, but a nation of cannons and law. And yet, even Peter must sleep. In 1725, he collapses beside a canal. Fevered. Delirious. He calls out for paper. For ink. For something unfinished. But the words never come. He dies with his hand raised, as if to sign, or to stop something, or to bless what he cannot control. And St. Petersburg does not mourn. It continues. The wind still lashes the stone quays. The ships still creak at harbor. The snow still falls in spirals, indifferent. He is buried in a church he built, beneath a spire that pierces the sky like a question unanswered. And Russia stands at the edge of a new abyss. She is vast. Powerful. Feared. But she is no longer whole. Something was lost in Peter's blaze. The silence. The soil. The icons that once wept in wooden chapels. What remains is stronger, perhaps, but colder. The empire will grow. It will conquer the Caucasus. March into Crimea. Break the backs of serfs and poets alike. It will birth emperors and tyrants and martyrs. It will rewrite maps. But somewhere, beneath that vast crown, a question still echoes, a whisper in the bones: what did we trade to become this? And was it worth it? The candle gutters in the chapel. The icon stares back, silent, cracked, unreadable. A soldier passes beneath it, boots loud on marble. He does not bow. And the wind from the Baltic whistles through the window, cold and sharp, like the breath of a ghost that will never be buried.